Don't you find it funny that when you pay for a product, you have a 14-day statutory right to return it if you don't like the product or there's a defect with it? Yet when we vote for our MPs to represent our interest and they go against us, we don't have any real mechanism by which we can put them back in favor of someone who can actually do the job? Well, I want to tell you that this is not a flaw of the democratic process, but a feature. And before you start typing in the comments about recall petitions, please know that it's only a token gesture. It's the equivalent of putting a plaster on a lethal bullet wound while the bullet is still in your body causing internal hemorrhage. In most cases, your prognosis will still be death. Yet, during every election cycle, it's tradition for the media to do press pieces about voting, predictions, statistics, and polling, all in an effort to tell the masses how important this arbitrary vote will be this time. Yet you will always find that no matter who wins the elections, the status quo always remains. And in the rare cases where there are changes, you will find that they are always superficial at best. And at the end of the day, dissatisfaction, betrayal, and regret is the most pervasive feeling in the majority of the electorate. Yet at the end of the 5-year parliamentary term, we are ready to do it all over again to ourselves. Voting has become an exercise in futility, but remains the only authorized means of self-expression in our democratic system. To partake in any other means to have your voice heard, for example through riots and protesting, is quickly branded by your betters as nuisance and thuggery. And oftentimes, the response to this kind of expression is always through violence and overwhelming force. But as Martin Luther King said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And as it stands now, to be a voter is the equivalent of being a mental patient in a straitjacket, locked in a padded cell screaming into the void. The only emotions to be felt for you is pity and contempt, and in the end, you are easily ignored. And the simple reason for this state of affairs is this. The political class assumes that the general public is simply uninformed when it comes to making decisions about the long-term survival and interests of the nation. And this reason is the bane of the conflict between voters and their politicians. So let's begin. In every democratic nation, there is an established set of laws called a constitution that grants you, as a citizen, an option every few years called a vote. This option will be exercised when it comes to choosing your political leaders or making your opinion felt on a national issue, such as in the case of a referendum. However, the constitution of a nation does not exist to protect you, but rather the political class or its rulers. It's a social contract that sets the bounds in which the citizen may operate and clearly lays out the things that are acceptable or not acceptable to that society. Think of it like how every big corporation has an HR department that sets the policies on acceptable behavior at the workplace. They don't do this to protect the common worker, but rather to cover their ass in the case of a corporate lawsuit. Now, since you were old enough to understand right from wrong, you had to be indoctrinated into believing in the democratic process through subtle and mundane means. For example, as a student, you were often encouraged to choose your class reps in a show of majority preference. By willingly participating in such a process, you start to internalize and normalize the process of choosing your masters in the form of a representative. With that said, you must understand that the concept of voting for your reps does not really matter either, because it's the illusion of choice given to the masses to placate them. If your chosen leader doesn't do what you like, you vote them out of office during elections and you feel good afterwards, right? But this practice goes as far back as the Roman Republic, where citizens were given grain while enjoying gladiator games all paid for by generous patrons, hoping to sway their votes in crucial elections. This strategy was even used by Julius Caesar numerous times to secure his rise into the absolute dictator of Rome. But the true purpose of the voting ritual is to also deceive the masses about the true inner workings of power, because oftentimes, the truly powerful people in the political system are never elected in the first place. Think J. Edgar Hoover as the head of the FBI. But this simple trick is one we fall for time and time again because of our deeply ingrained beliefs in the voting process, as well as our penchant for bloodletting against the ruling class for slights against us, the voters. And although we might feel great after we've had our say on the political careers of those we come to detest, we later find out through the actions of their replacement that it was essentially an exercise in self-harm, because again, the only one that benefited was the politician who convinced us to go against our own best interest. It's like paying for the attention of the OnlyFans girls that you like. After the elation of the cream and the socks adventure, all you feel is the shame and regret of throwing good money away on what amounts to a fucking scream.
Have you no shame?
We in the UK tend to pride ourselves on our parliamentary democracy, and this pride is the very reason why we were so blinded by political machinations until recent times. Our level of distrust in our politicians is at an all-time high, and for good reasons. Yet most of us are still delusional enough to think that things will change by simply voting in new people. when the cause of this discontent is still not addressed and keeps getting bigger. In 2016, the majority of the UK population voted to leave the EU. Ironically, during the referendum campaign, one of the reasons given by the UK politicians to leave was the fact that the European Council had not been democratically chosen. They said this without a hint of shame and not even a cough to hint at self-awareness. I guess someone should have told Boris, Gove and Farage that their buddies in the House of Lords were in the same boat. But then again, was good old Anglo-Saxon democracy if not hypocrisy in disguise? And as a note on propaganda, Joseph Goebbels would be so proud of you. From the mood at the time, most Leave voters would have been okay with a clean break from the EU, but instead, the political class would delay the process for years, until it eventually ended up with a lopsided deal in favor of the EU that the UK is still suffering from till this very day. The funny thing is, this delay was caused mostly by the House of Lords blocking the bill repeatedly. Even the Labour Party knows how the game is played, as they have increased their already bloated count of over 800 members in the chamber by a further 25 as of the 10th of December 2025. And I find it funny that the Workers' Right Bill, which has proven to be unpopular by the capitalist class, was then defeated by 24 votes in the House of Lords as of the 11th of December 2025. I am sure to hardcore Labour voters, this is only a coincidence, but to any perceptive person, it's obvious that Mr. Starmer is only doing what his paymasters want. Because when you are trying to water down a token bill introduced in Parliament only to keep up your appearances, you don't want your gullible voters to know that their best interests conflict with your benefits. To anyone that thought someone called Sir would ever fight for the common man, I hope you realize the stupidity of your vote. But I digress. I would also want you to understand that it is not a mistake that election reform never really happens here, even though a majority of people have been demanding it for decades on end. Whenever a political party is in opposition, they parrot the lines of seeking a representational system like most European nations have. But the moment they benefit from the first-past-the-post system to gain a significant majority they can actually enact their reform with, the talk of election reform disappears from their messaging like panties on a porn set. This is also why I know that for all the talk of abolishing the House of Lords, that no single political party will ever dare to do it, because they use appointments to the House as a means of repaying favors to loyalists and donors alike. This action also has the effect of stifling their political opponents from passing meaningful laws when they are voted out eventually. What is required to abolish the House of Lords is a national referendum. But the question of if the citizenry will even vote for such a thing is questionable, because nearly 1,000 years of history and propaganda is not easily removed. So even if a party makes such a promise to the voting public and they break it, all the party has to look forward to is being voted out at the end of the parliamentary term. And just in case you were wondering why parties get away with it, well, there is no means by which an entire election can be voted by the citizenry. And therein lies the problem of recall petitions.
Wake up to reality.
I don't know why people believe in petitions as a means of stopping any government action or enacting change. But I guess when you are stuck in a mental cage of civility, you tend to believe that every path dictated to you will lead you to the truth. When over 3 million people signed a petition calling for the resignation of Keir Starmer and calling for the general election for the breaking of manifesto promises, the only thing that the Labour Party ever did about it when it was brought to Parliament was the equivalent of tough shit. Even after this moment, people still think that a petition will stop the government's rollout of the unpopular digital ID cards. There is no nice way to say this, so here goes. There have been many petitions signed by concerned citizens that simply get tossed because there is no constitutional reason that a single petition will be acted upon. And when it comes to a politician's self-preservation and the moral good, don't hold your breath for the latter choice. The benefits of power are too immense to even consider the opinions of concerned plebs. But before you get me all entirely wrong, understand this. Yes, I'm a person that believes in the notion of democratic republic as opposed to any dictatorship. But the problem with most Western democracies is the fact that we don't have any mechanism by which we can change our leaders outright. If you have seen the clip of Starmer getting heckled by a Labour member on stage, then understand that this concept was what that person was talking about before he was dragged away and made to look like a madman. Yes, I am aware that there are protocols in place that allow for by-elections when required, but unless the MP has been caught in a scandal or dies, the discretion to call for by-elections falls on the government or his party to even allow it. This is not how a democratic process should work. So understand that all citizen petitions in the end are useless to enact any real change, and the simple reason for this is this: no turkey will ever willingly vote for Christmas. So of course they will debate your petitions as a joke and make fun of it, but they will actually never enforce it because by parliamentary rule, it's not enforceable. So in that kind of democracy, how does your vote really matter when your grievances can simply be ignored? And that, my friend, is the simple truth. So permit me to raise a toast to this useless activity of voting and to we, the gullible hamsters on the wheel going in circles. We always go in with the promise of hope only to end up being fucked in the end, and this cycle goes on and on till we are all feeling hollow, jaded and run through like an oscillating farm sprinkler. Till next time, friends.